Well, hello again. Stuart Pearce alongside me, Jim Proudfoot, looking ahead to England's next match, which is obviously here in Dusseldorf, taking place on Saturday. Still a few days until the game starts, so there's a little bit of uncertainty about various aspects of England's team selection. At the time of recording this, we're not sure exactly what the situation is going to be with Jude Bellingham. I don't think any of us are expecting that he will get a suspension, but there is obviously that possibility. And Kieran Trippier's injury and fitness status also has question marks over it. But there's so much to discuss, as always, Stuart. Looking back on the last game, looking back on the last 8 games, really, the progress that has been made or hasn't been made, and what needs to happen for that game against Switzerland. Let's start today by talking about Declan Rice, because I think that there's nobody who's quite divided opinion, really, in terms of their performances in the 4 games so far, like Dec. Where do you stand on what he's done? What does he need to do more of? What have you been impressed with?
Well, let's look at Dec as a whole, and what he was almost first pick in the team for the job that he done. That holding midfield player, shielding in front of the defensive unit. We had question marks about the defensive unit going into this tournament. I would say prior to the last game, we were quite pleased with how the defensive unit played, especially Mark Gahey. And Dec, played his part within that, playing just in front of them. I think his performances have frustrated one or two, where not necessarily what he's done defensively, Jim, more so what he's done when he's received the ball off the back line. They want to see a little bit more money for their buck, if you like. They want to see him more expansive in forward passing. And I think England have frustrated the fans being very backwards and sideways and slow on the build-up from the back line into those midfield areas that Declan evolves in. And then it's down to him. He's the conduit to get the ball from off the back line, to get turned and play forward a little bit more readily, I think. And he's frustrated one or two by not doing it as they would like.
So his pass completion was excellent. There's no getting away from that in that last game, which was great to see. But so many of his passes, a high proportion of them were sideways and backwards. So is that because of his mentality and the way that he's playing in this game? Is that by necessity because of the framework of the team that he's not being given the opportunity to push forward a little bit more? And of course, that then leads us on to, yet again, who should be playing alongside him, which is something that I think I've asked you ahead of every England game so far.
Well, listen, he might have some sort of shackles on him in regard to pushing forward, but that's certainly not a restriction to passing forward. They're two different things, So I still feel as though, and I felt this when I worked with him at West Ham, he's got a good passing range. I'd like to see him show it off a little bit more. I really would, in a forward stance. Who plays alongside him? I still think you're not looking at Declan Rice and thinking he needs to be outside the team. I still feel as though on his day, in his specific position, he is one of the best players at these championships. His form's not been outstanding at these championships. I think he's been steady without being impressive. But you could level that on most of the England players. It's getting the balance alongside him. Trent's played there, and everyone says as the experiment finished, over with. Gallagher for his energy and whatever, and one or two have said, it's not really worked. Kobe Mainoo come in last time, done okay, but didn't really grab it like he did when he come off the bench at half time. So we're thumbing round for a formula and form for too many players within the team, and especially in that midfield area.
So the one thing that hasn't been tried so far, and it might provide a potential solution for Declan getting further forward, you know what I'm going to say?
Yes.
Adam Wharton, who will play that little bit deeper, his starting position naturally, and we see it for Palace, we saw it for Blackburn, is maybe 5 yards further adrift, but it would allow Declan the opportunity to push forward that little bit more. Is this the time for that, or is a quarterfinal of a major tournament far too big an ask to throw somebody of Adam Wharton's international experience in?
Yeah, I think when you've made a call in regard to bringing Adam into the squad, especially a young man who's coming up in the world and whatever, he was a surprise inclusion, I think. In some quarters, like yourself, the more rounded, saw more of him, you thought, no, I can see why he's been picked. He's had a really good, end to the season and one thing and another. It's a big ask. You always, as a manager, want to put the players in when the team are doing quite well and they can sort of other players around them are on good form to help them out and help them through the game. Football's slightly different nowadays. We do put youngsters in with very little experience, I think, and it might be a decent option. If you want to get more out of Declan Rice in a more advanced area and show that energy that he's got and drive, maybe that is the solution to do so. Pop Adam Walton in behind him and say, look, we want you to push on a little bit more. Show us that energy you've got.
We know there's going to be at least one change. That's enforced because of the suspension of Mark Gahey. He's picked up a yellow card in each of the last 2 matches. So who plays at centre-half alongside John Stones? Is it going to be Konsa? Is it going to be Lewis Dunk? What's the solution?
I think for me it's Konsa. I think Konsa's been the one that's come on in the lead-up friendlies as such, a little bit more regular than Lewis Dunk. I see him ahead of Lewis Dunk personally. I know a lot of Brighton fans often call in and say Lewis should be in the starting lineup and one thing and another. I think Konsa's ahead of him. I think he'll get the shout for the game on Saturday, without a doubt, ahead of him. And you just hope that the reaction, I mean, I know John Stones has played a bit of football here and the odd niggle with him as well, but prior to this game just gone, I think our defence has been the best part and the best unit of the team. So we hope that Konsa coming in will solve that issue.
All ifs, buts and maybes, as we've been saying. We're recording this on Tuesday, and as a consequence, we're assuming that Jude Bellingham is available. We don't know about Kieran Trippier, so I think we've got to frame the next part of the discussion 2 ways. What do you do if Trippier's fit? What do you do if Trippier isn't fit? And is it one and the same?
Well, I mean, we've seen Saka at left-back in the last game.
Despite him publicly saying that he doesn't want to play left-back.
Exactly, and I think we were chasing a game and everything went out the window, to be quite honest with you, in the last game. We ended up having sort of 4 defenders on the pitch and 6 very attack-minded players as such, you know. So at that stage, you know, the rule book went out the window, I think, you know. We were desperate to stay in the tournament. You know what? I'm a little bit flummoxed. We've talked about moving Kyle Walker maybe to left back and playing Trent on as right back. For me, that's not the way forward. I don't think Kyle Walker's playing particularly well at right back. I've got to say it. You know, I think he's a world-class right back. I really do. I rate him that highly. But I've not seen that from him at this tournament. So moving him probably wouldn't be as critical as it would have done when he's in his pomp. I don't think you're taking away too much there, but I'm still loath to pull players out of their natural position. I think they're doing quite well in. You might even be better off putting, if Trips doesn't make it, putting the likes of Trent Alexander at left back, because he'll naturally gravitate inside onto his right foot, I think, in possession. And you might see what we see for Liverpool, starting at right back and drifting inside to receive the ball in there, coming onto it and getting his head up and playing those passes we thought he might do from a midfield berth. That's not developed, Jim. So could he do it from a left-back position is the question I'd ask if you're looking to chop and change and get one in there. Is that Trent? We haven't talked about Trent Alexander potentially playing as a left-back. We're happy to accept that Trippier can do it.
Yep.
Trent might actually unlock the ability to drift in onto his natural right foot to spray passes or close his foot and play passes beyond to the left-hand side.
That feels as though a light bulb has just started shining over your head.
I hadn't even thought of that before you asked the question. Now, all of a sudden, you've led me down. It has, yeah. It has. I thought to myself, why haven't we talked about Trent doing that job? He's a fullback by trade. He enjoys drifting into midfield, and he's drifting into midfield on a more natural berth with his right foot, I think.
Well, it might work in this game because we imagine that Switzerland are going to attack predominantly down the left-hand side. That tends to be what they do. So they'll play 3-4-2-1. And Rodriguez will play on the left of the 3 at the back as a centre-half, but he will be given the licence to push forward. And they've got Abisha playing at left wing-back outside him. And the combinations between those 2 are good. So England have to make sure that they are defensively very solid on the right-hand side. So if you play Alexander-Arnold at left-back, but he was the man that was given the opportunity to push forward into midfield, England then effectively, when they haven't got the ball, are playing with a 3, but Walker stays back. So he can deal with that counter-pressing threat that Switzerland offer where they're so good. And then Trent can come forward from the left-hand side into midfield. But if you do that, do you have any reservations about the left-hand side of England's defence from a defensive point of view? That might well be the way that gets the most out of Trent and gets an extra body pushing forward and more forward passes. Yep. But is there too much of a trade-off defensively, or do you think that England just become a wider 3 when they're out of possession and cover it that way?
Well, we're assuming Konsa will play as that left-sided central defender potentially. So if he is, I think he's naturally played games at fullback as well. So he's happy to go into those areas. Big central defenders that get dragged out wide. Now, you might look at Lewis Dunk and say, I really like you as playing as a central defender with bodies around you, but defensively, I don't really want you to go into wide areas. That might go back to the original statement, who plays centre-half. Konsa is definitely more suited going to defend in those wide areas.
Okay, so that's the back end of the team. One final question about the defence, and that is tactically, Switzerland, as I mentioned, a really good counter-pressing team. And I think you and I share reservations about England's ability to be able to deal with the form that they're in at the moment with an effective counter-press. What needs to change so that we haven't got problems there?
I think, firstly, we look at the moment almost conditioned as a team that what do we do as a team? Well, we play out from the back and we look to play the ball into midfield and little bump passes and whatever. Now, if you're a good pressing team, Jim, you rub your hands together with that. You think they're not going to play the ball beyond us. We know they're going to take passes. So all of a sudden, you say to yourself, right, okay, we're going to get in shape. We're going to wait for the first pass, maybe the second pass. Then all of a sudden, collectively, we're going in numbers after the ball. And if England players and defenders are not conditioned, my proviso at the back, before I receive the ball, I look to see what is the furthest pass forward I can actually play. Is something on? Can I hurt the opposition with a longer pass? If I can't, you're looking to your wide player, to your midfield player, to your centre-half, if you like. If you've not looked and seen that before you receive it, because you think, well, we're a team that takes a few passes to play through the thirds, that's a dangerous place to be. Because teams that press you and press you aggressively will take it off you. And that worries me. We'll spread to play, and all of a sudden, straight balls into people with their back to play is a real, real danger.
So in essence, don't be afraid to go long.
We felt that in the last game. We spoke in commentary and said, look, there's a team here that have got 4 players on the halfway line, 4 defenders on the halfway line, dealing with whatever you put up against them. So if we push 3 players up, 4 players up, or 5, they stayed there in a unit of 4. They pressed with a 6. And that 6, including the deep line one, was quite high. Now, what does that tell me as a defender that's trying to build up? If I can't play through the thirds, I've got to mix my game up a little bit. I've probably got to mix my game up anyway. So we'll play the passes. What are you going to do? Okay, let's have a look. What are you 6 going to do? Where's the space? Is it outside now and outside the press? Or alternatively, can I play through the press? Or alternatively, can't do either. I'm going to drop one to Harry Kane beyond that. Or beyond the back line and turn the back line round. You've got to mix it up. And I think we didn't do that enough, Jim.
At the front end of the pitch, of all of the players who so far haven't started a game, there's one that's having more calls for him to be included than any other. That's Cole Palmer. Do you have to get him in the team now?
Well, I think his case for being in the team was really, really strong last time out. And we didn't do it. We didn't take that option. I think he come off the bench and was decent again. Not as good as probably the first game when he come off, but it was another decent performance, and he looks like a player that wants to get on the ball, play on the front foot, get turned, link in. He put some good balls into the box. It wouldn't, you know what? If you pushed me and really pushed me and said, what is this team going to look like? I think he's going to go back, apart from Konsa, if everyone's there. I think he's going to wheel the same team out again. I really do. I don't think it's the right thing to do, but I think he'll do that because there's almost, I don't know whether there's a protective mechanism that says, I don't know what to do to change it. So I'm just going to run with it because we're still in the competition and playing well, and I think this is my best team. But Palmer, if you put Palmer in for Saka, and I feel sorry for Saka because I don't think, and I've mentioned it many times on commentaries, Cole Walker as a fullback is not helping this boy out. He's got to do more for him. He really has. Because I like Saka. I think he's an outstanding player. But unless you've got a distraction run from your fullback, your work is that much harder to try and get turned and face the opposition up.
You're still going, and again, the usual proviso about Jude, we're assuming that he's going to be okay and allowed to play. You're still going with Bellingham and Foden, or are you leaving one or the other out to change the balance of the team?
No, I think if there's a change at all, and it's Palmer, I think Palmer will play instead of Saka, and Saka will be the one that is sacrificed. I don't think, personally, over the 4 games, I think performance-wise, I think that Foden's performances have been stronger than Jude's. And people would look at me and say, are you crazy? He's won us one of the games. He's kept us in the tournament with his goals. And I grant that. His goals have been brilliant. And you're loath to take players out of the team that can score a goal at the drop of a hat like that. And by the way, 2 of the best goals you'll ever see in tournament football that he's delivered for us. And I don't want to underestimate that. So you're not going to take Jude out of the team. But I think it would be harsh on Phil Foden to be left out of the starting lineup as well, because I think he's improving game on game. And we think, on what we've seen for Manchester City, he can get us to the final and win us the tournament on his day. So we're in it's a really difficult team selection for the manager. When push comes to shove, apart from Konsa, I think he'll put the same team out, Jim.
Okay, and that leaves Harry Kane playing up front, obviously. 7 goals now in his last 7 games in knockout football in international tournaments. Are you still happy with Harry Kane's level of performance, bearing in mind that Ivan Toney gives another option? You still, Kane starts, but always, and this is another recurring theme really from these pre-briefs, the substitutions have got to be made at the right time. So you're looking that you keep Kane out. If you're going to tell the players that they've got to play longer to get around the Switzerland counter press, can you make a case for going 2 up front, or absolutely not? It's just got to be Kane on his own with Toney off the bench, or Ollie Watkins.
The biggest problem you've got is if you go with 2 up front, you've probably got to lose somebody in the midfield area, and that means you're probably going to lose another midfield player that's going to play alongside Declan Rice, and you're just going to play with one holder. If you think you're strong enough to see the game out with just one holder, that's the way forward. I was quite impressed with Ivan Toney when he came on, to be fair. I think he gave us another dimension to what he done. He won the free kick in a wide area that ended up winning the winning goal that he was part of. He kept it alive. He gave an assist to Harry Kane. He gives a different dynamic to the forward play and more of a target man. So if you're looking to go from back to front a little bit more readily, he is probably the ideal suited man. I was quite surprised that he's been out the equation totally, and all of a sudden, when we needed a goal, otherwise it's bye-bye England, it wasn't Watkins, who I thought done reasonably well in the game, that he come on and stretched the opposition. Ivan Toney was the go-to centre-forward. So a couple of things have flummoxed me. The most important thing, Jim, early substitutions. I've been barking on about it. We've got to make them slightly earlier. We really have. You know, at half-time I expected 2, maybe even 3 substitutions in the last game because things were going that badly. We ended up making 1. It improved us slightly, and the substitutions eventually got us back in the game, I think, with their contribution to it. But they've got to be earlier.
You and Gareth are close. If he sent you a message and said, give me one piece of advice, Stu, just I'm trying to canvass opinion, give me one piece of advice. What's that piece of advice you're offering him?
I would probably go back to Blackadder. I don't know whether you saw Blackadder goes forth when he puts his pants on his head and sticks pencils up his nose and goes wibble. That would be the only advice. And it's a standing joke between me and Gareth, actually. That is the England manager's job. It's madness in the extreme. For me, what would be the one piece of advice? Don't get obsessed with playing through the thirds. I think that's the big thing that frustrates a lot of England fans, a lot of England pundits. We look as though we're playing too slow, too methodical to get the ball into the players that we think are game changers. Now, those game changers, all of a sudden, because we're slow and we don't play those forward passes, I'm looking at 4 England forwards, if you like, the 2 wides and Jude, and all coming back to the ball because they know that ball isn't coming up quickly enough or in behind on occasion. I would say, can we look forward slightly quicker and can we get the ball in the box when we're in wide areas? That's where our goals have come from. The 4 goals have come from a long throw, a wide free kick that we've kept alive and scored, a cross from Saka for Bellingham to arrive in the box. All stuff that we're seeing Spain do it regularly.
Absolutely. Now, Spain against Germany is our next commentary game. And that's on Friday down in Stuttgart. Then we're back here in Dusseldorf. Expecting the rain to be have abated by then. The weather should be a little bit better. England taking on Switzerland. The build-up starts at 4 o'clock your time. It's a 5 o'clock kickoff at the Merkur-Spiel Arena, just across town from here in Dusseldorf. Saturday tea time. Stuart alongside me. Adrian Durham in the chair, as always. And also, straight after the game, we'll be doing our debrief, hopefully with smiles on our faces this time. And Adrian's ratings won't be quite as off-piste as they normally are. That's all to look forward to. By the time we are next sitting here, we might be looking ahead to another semi-final. We'll wait and see. But thanks very much for watching this one, and we'll see you Saturday.
Was ist das? talkSPORT?